Nothing.
Yeah, I don't think she's here.
June's voice was faint. She placed her hands over her mouth. Her face looked green. The stench in the room was almost unbearable. It had grown far more unpleasant since the last visit. If Junpei had eaten lunch, he would have difficulty retaining it. He wanted to leave as soon as possible, but he had to be sure. And the only way to be sure was to check the other side of the divider. Wait here. June offered no resistance, nodded weakly as Junpei went past the divider. As they expected, Clover was nowhere to be seen. All that was on the other side was a dead body, lying in a reddish-brown puddle of dry and drying blood. There are many ways a man can die, but this... The skull was shattered, the head little more than a pulpy mass of brain, bone, and viscera. The left arm hideously twisted into a horrific alien shape, the bright white of the ulna shining through the remains of skin and muscle. Wait. Bright white. Ulna. Bone. The pieces fell into place. Junpei remembered something Clover had told him in the lab.
My brother's left arm is... It's not like a normal person's. The accident hurt him pretty bad. To save him, they had to cut off his arm.
Of course. Why hadn't he realized it earlier? Clover had told Junpei Snake's left arm was prosthetic. But the left arm of the corpse was clearly human, or had been. That meant the corpse wasn't Snake. Junpei and June headed back toward the large hospital room. They stepped through the door and out of the shower room. Down the hallway they went, searching for Clover. They had reached the stairs when Seven appeared, breathless and yelling. Junpei! June! Where are you guys? He looked pale. His face was drawn. Something terrible had happened. Junpei's breath caught in his throat. Did something happen? Seven drew a shaking hand across his face and gulped down a breath of air. Clover is dead. I found her in the first-class bathroom. All sound ceased for Junpei. The world was an empty, muffled expanse. Then he began to hear his own breathing. June's mouth moved, but he heard nothing. She tried once more. Her energy was gone, and she collapsed against the wall. He could have helped her, but he hadn't. And now she was dead. So he stood there, frozen in place. Why had this happened? He forced his body to move. Each step felt like another nail pounded into his heart. Finally, he was in front of her. He knelt, placed 3 fingers against her neck. No pulse, no breath. But she was still warm. Her eyes closed peacefully. It would have been easy to think she was asleep. Rather, if it weren't for the slowly expanding puddle of blood beneath her. He traced its source to her back, a gash just beneath her shoulder blade. Was the weapon a knife, then? If it was, the killer had taken it when they'd left. When he closed his eyes, he saw Clover smile. Innocent. He would never see her smile again. He could have done something. He could have helped her. His stomach twisted itself into a sickening knot. Junpei lifted a limp June from the floor, carried her from the bathroom. You all right? It was a foolish question. He knew that.
I think so.
Her fever had gone down, but the emotional scars weren't likely to recede as quickly. Junpei laid his hand on her shoulder, and they walked back to the bedroom. You should get some rest. He lowered June until she was sitting up against the bed. She nodded once and stared at the floor. 4 others in the room. Ace, Lotus, Santa, 7. They all stared at nothing, their faces drawn and tired. After a while, they drifted into the bathroom to see Clover's corpse themselves. Once everyone was back in the bedroom, Jinpei walked slowly to the center, looked around as the slumped figures gathered there. Who was the first to find the body? Me. 7 spoke from behind Junpei. His hand was up. Why'd you come to this room? To look for Clover. What else? I found her body in the bathroom. As soon as I did, I ran outside. I got to the top of the stairs, by the casino, and yelled as loud as I could. Hey guys, I found her, but it's bad. She's in the bathroom, in the first-class cabin. Come quick. Or something like that. I went back to the bathroom. Ace, Santa, Lotus showed up real soon after that. I guess you two hadn't heard me or something, because you didn't show. So I took off down the stairs to look for you. And after that, I mean, you know the rest, right? Jinpei nodded. There was one more thing he needed to ask. 7, I'm worried. What's that? When we finished all the puzzles in this room and got the door open, you stuck one of those plates in between the door and the frame, right? Why? Come on, did I already tell you that? I did it so the door wouldn't lock, so we could come back to this room. Oh. You think I did it? I don't know, though. It kind of depends on what you say, doesn't it? 7 sighed, shook his head. Follow me. There were 2 doors standing next to one another. He opened the one on the right. Behind it, a closet. 7 stepped inside. He stood in front of one of the shelves that filled it and gestured toward the box. A small metal cube. He looked at Junpei. This is the reason. The safe. We couldn't open it when we were getting through the room. I figured there might be something pretty important in it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Besides, I figured eventually we might figure out what the numbers are for the safe. And if we did, I didn't want to screw around with door 5 again. So I put the plate in the exit door so we could get back in that way. Get it? Jinpei nodded, looked back at the safe. He grabbed the handle and shook. Nothing. Locked as it had been when 7 first found it. There was one change. Just underneath the safe was a pile of fine reddish-brown powder. Rust. Jinpei stared for a moment. Had someone opened the safe and dislodged the rust? Jinpei left the closet. 7 followed behind him to the bedroom. It was cold, quiet. No one spoke. They sat, frozen in place by shock and grief and fatigue. The room felt tiny, oppressive, and the thick metallic smell of blood filled the room. Jinpei turned, headed for the living room. Anything to get out of there. Was there some other clue? Anything that might lead him to whoever had stabbed Clover? He took his time and examined carefully. His eyes caught on the door. The one that led to the number 5 door. Behind there was the dead body of the 9th man. Maybe I should look just in case? He pushed open the door. The smell hit him like a blow to the face. His lungs contracted, unwilling to inhale such fetid air. Acid boiled up from the base of his stomach, churning what little food was there into a violent froth. It was too much. He puked. A thin stream of yellow water and bile splattered onto the floor. He wiped his mouth weakly, stared at the dead body. Chunks of torn flesh lay in an arc. What remained of his intestines had slid out onto the floor. The pool of blood that framed it was half dry, but so thick it had taken on a texture similar to egg yolk, prepared sunny side up. On the floor, next to the broken mass of the man's head, lay his glasses. Clacks. Is it clacks? Spidering? What? Cracks spidering across the lenses. The bloodstains near them had already dried, like scabs on the floor. That's when he noticed. It's gone. The bracelet! It's gone! It had been there when Junpei had gone through door 5 before. He was sure of it. Right next to the glasses. But now... nothing. The number 9 bracelet was gone. But why? Had someone taken it? He was turning it over and over in his mind when he heard Seven's voice. Where'd Junpei go? It drifted out to him from the living room. He walked slowly out of the hallway. Ah, there you are. You looking for something in the hall? Seven looked up as Junpei answered. You find something? He thought for a moment before he responded. No. Nothing. Technically, he wasn't lying. He hadn't found anything. In a way, that was the problem. Something he'd expected to find hadn't been there. The 9th man's bracelet. What's up? Well, I wanted you to take a look at something. What? Seven led Junpei back to the bathroom, to Clover. Something between a sigh and a groan escaped his lips. What was it you wanted to show me? I searched Clover's body again. I found this. As he spoke, he moved around Clover's head, knelt down, flipped open her right hand. What? A paper. I haven't actually looked at it yet. Didn't want to disturb the crime scene, you know? Basic stuff. Well, I did borrow one thing. He wasn't sure what that meant, but it likely didn't matter. The paper was more important. He picked it up, opened it. There were 2 sentences. Truth had gone, and truth had gone. Ah, now truth is asleep in the darkness of the sinister hand. What's this? Some kind of secret code? Seven peered over Junpei's shoulder at the note. Junpei stepped away and into the living room. He began to pace, attempting to decode the note. The first clue was likely the phrase sinister hand. Sinister hand means... Now, if you've been paying attention to all the text that we've been receiving, you might be able to piece this together. Alternatively, if you have some vague knowledge of Indian culture, you might actually know this one. In Indian culture, you do pretty much everything with the right hand. It's thought that the left hand is the embodiment of evil, and as a result, presenting it to someone is considered disrespectful. Junpei looked at his own left arm. At the bracelet. Did the darkness of the sinister hand have something to do with the bracelet? He examined it closely. There were 2 protrusions on either side. The left and right side. Left and right. Right and left. Truth had gone. It sounded funny. What did it mean? Maybe those 2 words? What else could gone and truth mean? Truth, of course, meant something that was correct, something that was fact. In other words, something that was right. It would follow, then, that gone meant left. After all, after someone left, they were gone. In this case, however, it clearly referred to their directional homonyms. So that meant truth was right, gone was left. That seemed to make sense. Junpei looked at the bracelet again. At the 2 protrusions on the left and right sides. Junpei pressed them in the following order. And there are a lot of options, aren't there? But if you've been paying attention, truth had gone, and truth had gone. Right, left, right, left, right, left. By the way, if you get this specific choice wrong, then you do dead end and have to try again. Just so you know. 1, 4, 3, 8, 3, 4, 2, 1. One after another, 8 numbers flashed on, then off, of the face of Junpei's bracelet. He checked one more time to be sure. Hey, what are those numbers? Junpei didn't answer. He couldn't. He had no idea what they were either. Besides, he was sure he would forget the numbers and the order they came in if he said anything. One, 4, 3, 8, 3, 4, 2, 1. Muttering the numbers to himself over and over, Junpei headed toward the bathroom. 1, 4, 3, 8, 3, 4, 2, 1. 1, 4, 3, 8, 3, 4, 2, 1. 1, 4, 3, 8, 3, 4, 2, 1. Before long, he arrived at the safe. Its lock was the only device he could think of that required a sequence of numbers. Besides, someone had opened it at least once already. Maybe Clover had come to the bedroom to open it. Junpei slowly dialed the numbers the bracelet had given him. 1 to the right, 4 to the left, 3 to the right, 8 to the left, 3 to the right, 4 to the left, 2 to the right, 1 to the left. The small telltale sound of a lock opening resounded. He grabbed the handle, took a breath, pulled it up. Inside was a piece of paper, roughly the same size as the one Clover had been holding. Junpei picked it up. Fact 1. The nonary game was played once before, 9 years ago. Fact 2. The person with the number 2 bracelet attended the game 9 years ago. Fact 3. It was planned by 4 people. Cradle Pharmaceutical CEO, Gentaro Hongo. Cradle Pharmaceutical Chief of Staff, Nagisa Ijisaki. Cradle Pharmaceutical R&D Supervisor, Teruaki Kubota. Majority shareholder in Cradle Pharmaceutical, Kagachika Musashido. I must punish them for the innocent lives they sacrificed. This is the only warning they will receive. That innocent souls might be saved, I might now state the truth. 0. Junpei left the closet. There were 5 people waiting for him in the bedroom. Ace, Lotus, Santa, 7, June. He looked at each of them in turn and placed his hands in the pockets of his vest. Sorry, but do you think you could all come with me? Come with you? I want all of you to go to the big hospital room with me. Why? There's something I want to be sure of. What do you want to be sure of? I want to know if the person I suspect is really the culprit. Wait, then you're saying... Yep. I think I've got it figured out. I know who killed Snake and Clover. The atmosphere changed. Grief was suddenly gone, and replaced by a tension like a strap of leather stretched to its limit. 5 sets of eyes stared at Junpei. He pretended not to notice. Anyway, if you could all please move to the big hospital room, I'll explain everything as soon as we get there. Almost as if on cue, the bell rang. The bell from the clock in the main staircase. Five times. All they had was an hour. We don't have a lot of time. Come on. One by one, they followed Junpei out of the bedroom. Actually, before we get started, I was hoping you could do something for me. Junpei stopped in front of door 3 and turned around. Ace, 7, Lotus, could you please place your palms on the red? Yeah? Why? If we need to get to the shower room, why don't we just... No, we're not going inside. Once you've authenticated, step away from the door. Why? Just do it. Or maybe you don't want to know who killed Snake and Clover? Junpei's implication was clear. 7 understood perfectly. Ugh, fine. What about you, Ace? Lotus? Very well. Sure. Once they'd finished, they stepped away from the door as Junpei had instructed. 3 asterisks. Junpei approached it and held his bracelet over the scanner. He made quite sure he didn't place his palm on it, and instead, only the bracelet. The 4th asterisk appeared. It was indeed possible to authenticate without placing one's palm on the red, so long as the bracelet was brought near it. Junpei pulled the lever. Door 3 opened like a hungry mouth. 9 seconds later, it shut. Unfed. Junpei walked slowly back to the others, who were waiting some distance from the door, talking to one another. Santa and June had joined them as well. It looked as though they hadn't found a chance to break into the conversation yet. As Junpei approached, they turned to look at him, curiosity plain on their faces, and before long, the others did as well. Clearly, they were expecting some answers. Thanks, I appreciate your cooperation. By the way, Ace, would you mind if I ask you something? What is it? Do you know who I am? What kind of question? Just answer it, please. Who am I? You're Junpei. Of course. Who else would you be? Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. Actually, I'm Santa. What? Ace's voice was full of surprise, but was also tinged with confusion and fear. Everyone else looked nearly as surprised. Santa looked especially shocked to discover he was actually someone else. If he spoke, however, the trap would be exposed. Junpei quickly continued. The clothes I'm wearing, I borrowed from Junpei. The clothes he's wearing are mine. We had a little swap. That's ridiculous. Impossible! So you're saying I'm not Santa? Of course you aren't! Why? What makes you so sure I'm not? If you were Santa, then door 3 wouldn't have opened just now. 1783 is 19. 1 plus 9 would be 10. The digital root would be 1. But the 4 of us opened door 3. You can't possibly be Santa. Your bracelet number isn't 3. It's 5. Exactly. Only then, when it was too late, Ace realized. He set his jaw, glared at Junpei. You're exactly right. My bracelet is 5. Sorry, Ace. I tricked you. Successfully, I might add. Of course I'm not Santa. I'm Junpei. Who could possibly think I was? It's obvious I'm not. To think I was would be ridiculous. But I guess you couldn't see just how obvious it was. I asked you before, what makes you so sure I'm not Santa? And you answered, if you were Santa, door 3 wouldn't have opened. Most people wouldn't say that. Their justification would be plain as day. It wouldn't be the bracelet number. One sentence. You don't have his face. Or something similar to that. Ace? I believe you have prosopagnosia. Junpei's voice was quiet and calm. He knew the truth. So did Ace. He could hear a sudden buzz of conversation from the others. Prosopagnosia?
What's that?
He heard Lotus begin to explain it to them. Ace glanced, and turned back toward Junpei and sighed. Very well, I confess. I have prosopagnosia. I cannot differentiate human faces. Is that what this is about? You want to mock me for my disorder? No, not at all. I'm not making fun of you. In fact, I feel kinda bad. The reason why I brought this up is there's an excellent chance the person who killed Snake has prosopagnosia. Ace's face tightened, eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Junpei leaned casually against the iron piping of one of the beds. I'll just come right out with it. I think it was you, Ace. You killed him. Junpei was suddenly very aware of 5 pairs of eyes. He had their undivided attention. The room had grown quiet. Junpei took a breath. That's ridiculous. What possible evidence do you... I have 3. The first. Think back to a few hours ago. You made us argue over the 3 doors here in the big hospital room. There was no way all 7 of us could go through them. Lotus suggested we sacrifice one of us. Junpei glanced at her. She looked away awkwardly. Then you, Ace, said, I'll stay here. Why would you say something like that? It's simple, really. You didn't want us to see the dead body in the shower room. You see, if Ace stayed behind, there were only 2 doors the rest of us could go through. Doors 7 and 8. There was no way we could get through door 3, the shower room. You knew that. That's why you volunteered to stay behind. Come on now, I think that's going a bit far. I can understand if you're jealous of my bravery, but please, don't devalue my actions. I only want to save the rest of you. Surely you can understand my altruism. Altruism, huh? Junpei stared off into the darkness at something very interesting and lazily began to dig a persistent bit of wax out of an ear. You already knew, didn't you? You knew that whichever doors we took, eventually we'd lead back to the big hospital room. What on earth are you saying? Of course I didn't know that. How could I have? Really? Yes. Pleading wasn't something they'd heard from Ace before. Junpei pulled the piece of wax from his ear, glanced at it, flicked it away. Okay, that's cool. I've still got 2 more pieces of evidence. The second, as I said earlier, prosopagnosia. Then you mean to imply a person with a disability can't Then you mean to imply a person with a disability where they can't distinguish human faces is a bad person? Junpei, they call that prejudice. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm not that stupid. Then why? Let me explain. I suppose there's something I should tell you. The corpse in the shower room. It's not Snake. What? What? Ace's face went pale. The others looked confused. If the body wasn't Snake's... I didn't put it together right away, but there was something Clover had told me. She said that Snake's left arm was prosthetic. He'd lost it in an accident. But the body we saw in the shower room, let's call him Guy X. Guy X's left arm was definitely flesh and blood. In other words, Guy X couldn't possibly have been Snake. Oh god. No, that's impossible. Ace had started muttering deliriously to himself, shaking his head back and forth. Junpei was long past caring. Let's say, hypothetically, the killer didn't have prosopagnosia. If that were the case, he would immediately recognize Guy X wasn't Snake. Even if the clothes were the same as Snake's, the voice similar, their faces would be completely different. It would have been obvious. And yet, why did Guy X die? What reason would they have had? They wouldn't have had one. On the other hand, prosopagnosia makes it more sensible. They thought Guy X was Snake because the clothes, the voice, and the mannerisms looked similar, and killed him. Wait just a moment. Let's say you're right, and I mistook Guy X for Snake. Even if I did, I would have had no motive to kill him. Why would I want to kill Snake? I can think of 2. 1, Snake knows about your past. If he ever revealed what he knew, that would have been really bad for you. You really didn't want that to happen, so to make sure Snake's mouth stayed shut, you killed him. 2, Snake had a grudge. You knew that, or at least you could have easily assumed he did. Even without exposing your identity, he was a threat to you. You never knew when you might be attacked. You couldn't let your guard down. Every moment was a moment he might try something. You didn't want that kind of danger hanging over you, so you killed him. Hold on. For the first time since the beginning of Junpei's prattling, someone besides Ace spoke. What's the past that Ace wouldn't want us to know? Why did Snake have a grudge? Well, take a look at this. Santa squinted at the paper, then read. The notary game was played once before, 9 years ago. The person with the number 2 bracelet attended that game. It was planned by 4 people. Cradle Pharmaceutical CEO Gentaro Hongo. What is this? Santa looked up from the paper. His eyes met Junpei's. The message from Zero. It was in the safe in the first-class cabin. Give me a break. Ace's face was red and shaking, his voice full of fury, tinged with desperation. That paper is a lie! Someone's trying to frame me! Me? You said me. Junpei's eyes narrowed. The trap closed. Ace inhaled sharply. His eyes flicked off of Junpei to something. Anything else. Wouldn't that mean you're admitting you're Hongo Gentaro, the CEO of Cradle Pharmaceutical? Or am I mistaken? It was as if a switch had been flipped. The color drained from Ace's face, and as he'd realized what he'd done, his eyes widened. Very well, I admit that much. I am certainly the CEO of Cradle Pharmaceutical, Gentaro Hongo. So what? I don't know anything about this notary game that supposedly took place 9 years ago. Everything on that scrap of paper is bullshit. Someone's trying to set me up, you see? First of all... Ace stammered as he tried desperately to work himself to a more tenable position. Junpei, you're claiming I did this all by myself. Think that over, alright? How could I have killed Snake? Not Snake. Guy X. I don't care who it was. You said the killer put this other man into door 3. Yeah, maybe. Then I couldn't have possibly done that alone. I couldn't have opened door 3 with only myself and Guy X. Actually, the opposite. What's... Ace's face was tight, teeth clenched. Junpei fixed him with a level stare. All the pieces were in place for the trap. Actually, Ace, when you were unconscious, I took something from you. Remember when you were injected with that anesthetic, fell asleep in the big hospital room? Yeah, back then, I took this. Junpei put his hand into his pocket. No, you couldn't have! Ace's right hand moved by reflex. With that, Ace was sealed. Gotcha! Your right hand there tells me all I need to know. You want to tell me why you were so worried? What's in that pocket of yours? It couldn't be a bracelet, could it? And its number, it couldn't potentially be 9, could it? Ace, Guy X, the 9th man's bracelet. That's all you need to open door 3. That's how you killed Guy X, all by yourself. All you needed was the number 9 bracelet in your pocket. Ace lowered his hand from where it had stopped, halfway to the pocket. He looked down at the floor, his face hidden. All he could see was the corner of Ace's mouth, twitching like a dying fish. If you want to play innocent, that's fine by me. Go ahead, tell me. I don't have the bracelet, if that's what you want to do. But if you could take off your coat and hand it to me, I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll have to take it by force. Right, Seven? Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Seven cracked his knuckles with a sound like gunfire. Ace roared with laughter. He threw his arms wide, his head back, filled the room with a sound that scarcely belonged there. Then it stopped. His arms came down, his head dropped to look straight at Junpei. His face was flat, cold, devoid of emotion. Well done, Junpei. As you so correctly deduced, I have the number 9 bracelet. I retrieved it while we were searching for the missing hardware for the red. I left the room I was supposed to search, headed to the first-class cabin on B-deck. His voice showed no emotion, no sense of remorse or interest. It was almost bored, as though he were reciting an especially dull corporate letter. My purpose was to obtain the number 9 bracelet. 9 is a potential ally in the notary game. Adding 9 to any set of numbers won't alter the digital route. I did mention that. As you can see, 9 is a very useful number. With it, one can go anywhere, with anyone. So I made for the first-class cabin to obtain it. Ace successfully acquired the number 9 bracelet. And he found an unexpected bonus. The 9th man's knife. He slipped both into his chest pocket and left. He walked down the stairs and headed back to where he was supposed to be. And that's where he saw Guy X. Mistook him for Snake. X was on his way to the large hospital room and hadn't noticed Ace. Ace made sure it stayed that way. He followed the man wearing Snake's clothes to door 3. When the man stopped, he walked up behind him, quietly, called out, "Snake." The man turned to look. He said nothing. No words came out of his half-open mouth. He seemed dazed, somehow, almost like a man half asleep. Maybe he'd been drugged? It didn't matter. Ace was certain the man was Snake. He knew Snake had been a part of the notary game 9 years before. Snake hadn't recognized Ace immediately, but he was blind. That much made sense. Why, then, hadn't Snake said anything? Surely he'd forgotten what had happened in the notary game, but not once had he attempted to confront Ace. Maybe his lack of sight had prevented him from recognizing Ace, or Snake had conspired with Zero to deceive him. In either event, he was a threat. It was better to deal with him sooner rather than later. Ace's mind was made up, and he moved. He held the number 9 bracelet over the red. He waved his own in front of it, too. Grabbed Snake's arm, shoved his hand against the scanner. The door opened. Ace threw the man through. 9 seconds later, the door shut. 81 seconds. And Guy X perished. After that, I returned to my post as though nothing had happened. After conducting my own search, I returned to the large hospital room, when the 1 a.m. bell rang. Ace's eyes were cold, his cheeks hollow and pallid. When he spoke, only his lips and tongue moved. The rest of his face was eerily still. Junpei glared at Ace. He took a deep breath, thought about the next question to ask. He didn't want to. He knew what the answer would be. He just didn't want to hear it. Junpei swallowed and spoke. "Did you kill Clover?" "Yes." "Why?" "She was Snake's sister. It was possible he'd told her something dangerous. Additionally, she'd gone through door 1. It seemed likely she might have found it." "Found what? Why don't you go through yourself? Maybe it's hidden somewhere." "Yeah, but Lotus and I went through door 1 too. We didn't see anything suspicious." "I thought as much after I heard your report. I doubt the two of you could find it." But perhaps Clover was different. Perhaps she had found it. I was, therefore, desperate to find her. And at last I did, in the first-class cabin. I spoke very calmly. "Did you see it?"
See what?
Don't act as if you don't understand. You were in the captain's quarters, weren't you?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Very well. By the way, what are you doing here?
Nothing.
There's blood on your shoes. Looks fresh. Did you take a look at the 9th man's corpse? I see. Your silence suggests you noticed. You saw something, didn't you? The bracelet was gone. Clover ran. She made for the exit, but Ace stood in her way. "You aren't going anywhere." He caught her by the collar as she passed, threw her to the floor, hard. She leapt back up, darted past him into the hallway. Ace followed at a run. He was faster. That's how I killed her. His face hadn't changed. If he felt guilt or remorse or anything one might feel after taking the life, it didn't show. "You son of a bitch." Seven's body trembled with rage. His voice rumbled with hate. Santa's eyes were bloodthirsty. Lotus and June's faces were distorted by anger. Ace looked at them and smiled. A cold, cruel thing with no humor. He shook his head, sighed. "I admit it. I've lost. Completely and utterly. But don't misunderstand, Junpei. I didn't lose to you. I lost to Zero. I'm rather disgusted with myself for falling into such a simple trap. It was a trap, make no mistake. I was trapped and manipulated by Zero. The man I killed in the shower room. If he wasn't Snake, I have no idea who he was. But he was wearing Snake's clothes. That was no coincidence. He'd also been injected with something that reduced his cognition and prevented him from identifying himself or resisting me. And we can't forget the components that were removed from the red before we arrived. I have no doubt Zero planned all this. Zero made sure I would kill that man. It follows, of course, that Zero knew everything I'd do. That I'd tried to take the number 9 bracelet, try to kill Snake, everything. Suddenly, Junpei remembered the last words Zero had written on the paper. I must punish them for the innocent lives they have sacrificed. This is the only warning they will receive. That innocent souls might be saved, I now state the truth. Zero. I remembered other words, too, from Clover, earlier.
I think Zero is one of us.
Junpei looked at the 5 people standing in front of him. Ace, Santa, June, 7, Lotus. Zero is one of us, but it couldn't be Ace. But there was also one more person. Snake. Maybe the man who died in the shower wasn't Snake. That meant Snake was certainly still alive. But where? Maybe Snake had made Guy X wear his clothes so he'd appear to be dead. But where was he now? Maybe he was somewhere laughing at them. If he was Zero, surely he had lied about many other things too. Was he watching them? Well, I believe I've finished with my confession. Why don't we get moving? He sounded as if he'd just finished doing nothing more exciting than describing the weather. For Santa, it was the last straw.
The hell is with this shit? You aren't going anywhere, you son of a bitch! We're gonna leave your ass here to rot!
Why? Because I killed Clover? That's ridiculous. Why are you so upset I killed the little bitch? She was nothing to you. A stranger you only met a few hours ago. Am I wrong? Bastard. 7 roared, lifted a fist that would likely have shattered Ace's jaw. But someone else was faster. Lotus. She stepped toward Ace and drove her fist into his nose. You've got some fire, don't you? I confess, I rather like a tough woman. He sniffed, wiped a small trickle of blood from his nose with a raised eyebrow.
Well, maybe you'd like another.
Oh, before that, let me give you one of my own. Lotus didn't have time to blink. Ace snaked his arm around her, pulled Lotus's back up against him. In the same motion, he reached into his pocket.